Hey, welcome back on the Good Morning Artesia radio show, and we want to finish up the broadcast today, talking a little local politics, if you will, as we've got 1 month from tomorrow is the general election, and unlike in previous years where school board elections and mill levies and other things like that would take place in March or April or other parts of the year, there's been a big push over the last 2 years to get everything on general election day, whether it's a city council election, school board election, hospital board, whatever. And so a little over a month from now, voters here in Artesia and across New Mexico are going to have a chance to go and vote in the general election, and it varies from community to community what will be on the ballot. But there will be some contested school board races this year. And Seliah Perkins is here along with Dan Banks. And Seliah, first of all, I just want to thank you for coming in. You kind of help man the Republican headquarters here in Artesia. And how's that going?
It's going pretty slow. It's catching on. I actually had 2 people come in yesterday.
2?
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Did you have enough cookies?
I don't serve food yet. Not yet. They're going to have to. It's just one of those things that we're there and people are learning and people are, I wouldn't say finally getting interested. I try to interest them in the school board election because that's what's coming up. And it's very important. And I think this is probably one of the first times that everybody running has had an opponent. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think that should get some interest. But I registered a new voter, and he was a young man of 19. And he was excited he was going to get to vote. And I said, well, then you go vote. It's school board, but it is very, very important. You just graduated. You know that.
Yeah.
So he bought a Trump 2024 flag.
Well, that's good.
Yes, it was.
It's a good, encouraging sign. And early voting here starts...
the 16th, I believe.
Yeah, pretty quick.
Yeah. And, I am going to... This is terrible. You might not want me saying this, but I'm going to encourage people not to vote early in this election because I have got a meet and greet every Thursday in October for the Republican candidates, and I want people to come and meet them and know what they think before they go vote.
Yeah.
Just like what happened in the national elections, early voting before they had their last debate, and people thought, I wish I hadn't voted yet.
Yeah, and you can't rescind it, and you can't change it.
Exactly.
But you can get 6 more mail-in ballots and vote 8 more times. I guess.
True. That's true.
But that is interesting. So this coming Thursday, who's going to be your
this guy
right here,
yes.
Dan Banks.
Yes.
Good morning, Dan.
Good morning. In addition to the school board election, talking about schools, we have a mill levy that comes up for vote. Mm-hmm. Now, this is money that the schools can use or will use for their program. And getting the local support for the mill levy is important for the school program in addition to the school board election.
Sure. And it's a tax that's already in effect.
It is
so
in effect.
It's not a new
tax.
Right.
Unless it's renewed.
Correct.
So it won't raise your taxes. And if they don't renew it, the amount that you'll see reduced on your property taxes is so minuscule you won't even know it. So it's worthwhile to vote in favor of that mill levy.
But the schools will see a tremendous impact, and they'll notice it. So you're encouraging people to vote to continue the mill levy, I take it?
I am absolutely asking them to do that.
Well, let's get to know Dan Banks. If I've met Dan and have known Dan over the years for a couple of other projects that you have been involved in. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Are you from Artesia originally, or are you like me, a move-in from someplace else?
An implant?
An implant.
Transplant. I have lived in southeast New Mexico since approximately 92 or 93.
Okay.
I've lived in Carlsbad for a little over 20 years. I lived in Roswell for a number of years. I've lived in Artesia now for about 13 or 14, maybe 15 years.
Are you retired, or?
I am definitely tired again. I am retired.
Retired. What did you do?
Oddly enough, in 1971 and 72, when I got my master's degree from the University of New Mexico in secondary education.
Okay.
But I didn't teach exactly. I was a public defender in Carlsbad for most of my time in Carlsbad. I taught for the College of the Southwest, however, after work, taught an interesting course called business law.
Okay.
What's that got to do with anything? It has to do with everything. We have a number of car dealerships in Carlsbad who would not be in existence today, they say, if they hadn't taken my course. I'm kind of proud of that.
Okay.
I have taught for the District Attorneys Association on issues concerning Fourth Amendment search and seizure. When I finally retired from the Public Defender's Department, I went to work for the District Attorney's Office in Roswell. And when I left them after Terry Hake's defeat, what was that, in 2006, 2007, it's been a while, I taught again, Fourth Amendment issues at FLETC here in Artesia. That's when I moved here. And I taught the Border Patrol agents all of what they call applied authorities.
Okay.
That was the law that gave them the authority to do the work that they were doing. So I've been a teacher in a number of different ways, but not in a classroom, not in a public school.
Okay. But you do have experience in education, and you have a degree that you received. You got that from UNM?
University of New Mexico.
University of New Mexico. I've heard of them.
Yeah, they're out there.
They're up there.
Pretty good institution.
They are out there.
So I take it then, as you have been living here in Artesia, have you been keeping an eye on issues involving education in the schools, or is there something recently that's come up that's kind of...
It has been growing.
It has been growing.
It has been not necessarily recent, but it has come to the forefront recently. It is this tension between what our New Mexico Constitution originally crafted. It was adopted before we were a state and then ratified when we became a state, that created the local, independent school board mechanism for managing and controlling our schools. It was not until Governor Richardson's administration that a constitutional amendment passed that created the Department of Education and the Secretary of the Department of Education. This was primarily done to handle the rise in charter schools that the local school boards were not handling very well. Unfortunately, or shall I say typically, people who are given power want to increase their power. When they're given a fiefdom, they want to make their fiefdom larger. And so that's what's been happening, the tension between the Public Department of Education and the local, independent local school boards. So lately, you've heard about this push for critical race theory being introduced into our schools. This has caused a large tension among many communities. Some are in favor of it, others are not. But the Public Education Department thinks they know better. And they are, in fact, forcing the schools to teach this stuff to our children. Now, why do I particularly find this offensive? Some people are going to say, well, you're so old, you couldn't possibly have any kids in our school system, so what's your dog in the fight? Okay. Well, I have a little poster that I'm making up that talks about my only dog in this fight are those bulldogs that go to our public schools. As a matter of fact, I have 7 mixed race great-grandkids. Do you think I want my grandkids, my great-grandkids, to be at war with one another because of what they're being taught in school, that one of them is an oppressor and the other is the oppressed? I do not. I also do not believe that we should be subjected to unelected bureaucrats forcing local independent school boards to operate in a fashion that the unelected bureaucrats desire.
Well, Dan, you mentioned
A bunch.
the Richardson
Yes.
when he was in office. And I think our current governor was in his administration. I don't.
Yes, she
It was in the health area. In any case, that was a constitutional amendment.
Correct.
It passed.
It did.
It's in effect, and I think there's been some things that it has been used to that it's been applied, situations in schools that's been applied in the past. I think most recently in financial issues or malfeasance on the part of some school board
Correct.
members. But where it really has kind of come to the forefront has been when we got ready for this school year with mask mandates,
Yes.
and now the critical race theory deal.
About a year and a half ago.
Sure. Now, given the constitutional amendment that gives the authority to the public education department to do what they're doing,
No.
it doesn't give the authority to them to do what they're doing.
I am disputing that assertion.
Okay.
There is currently a lawsuit that was filed approximately a year and a half ago by Gallup and McKinley School Systems, and about 20 other schools boards have joined that lawsuit.
Well, Artesia School Board
We have
unanimously
now-
voted to join.
We have now, finally, but I say that with some frustration, because you asked me what
But let's go
prompted
back to
me
the
to do this is
question.
because-
Let me go back to this, because there is the lawsuit, but that hasn't been heard yet.
Well, it's not
so
been-
as it stands right now, the constitutional amendment that was passed by the voters that has implemented the public education department is the law.
No, sir. That's what I'm saying. I'm disputing that.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's not the law.
Well, that is definitely the substance of that lawsuit.
Right.
The public education department is given some power, but it is not given ultimate power. In fact, the powers that were not given to it explicitly were reserved to the school boards. And where the powers overlap, the constitutional amendment provided that power was to be shared between the school board and the public education department. The public education department cannot unilaterally decide one thing or another where it is a shared power with the local school board.
So how did this apply in, say, the Los Lunas case, where they came in and just kicked the whole school board out? Or how did this
Floyd.
apply in the Floyd case, where the board there voted not to go along with the mask mandates, and that school board got kicked out? So give me an example of
That
where
is in litigation as well. So those questions, they're valid questions. They've not been resolved. Therefore, because they've not been resolved, what does that mean when I say resolved? They haven't been answered.
Right.
They haven't been definitively answered. Now, if the First District Court in Santa Fe rules that the public education department must follow what the constitutional amendment provided, as well as any legislation that was passed subsequent to the amendment to conform to the amendment, if they are acting outside of their scope of their powers, those mandates, those directives, those, they call them advisories, they're not advisories, they're not in effect. And they cannot be forced down the throats of the people who do not wish to follow them.
Well, from the casual observer,
Okay, as you are.
it sure looks to me like they're being enforced, because the Floyd School Board's gone and the Los Lunas School Board is gone. Two different issues, of course, but they're both gone. So as an elected member of the Artesia School Board of Education, you are successful in your bid and you become elected as a school board member. Given what we've seen so far, the fact that these other cases have not yet been resolved, what would you propose that the Artesia School Board do? What would you like to do as a member of the school board, and what would you encourage your fellow board members to do in regards to these issues, whether it's the critical race theory or the mask mandate or some of these other issues that have been in the forefront of the news?
Okay. I started to answer that question in a different way.
Okay.
As to what prompted me to decide that I wanted to run for the school board.
Okay.
And it has to do with the behavior of our school board at its school board meetings. They seemed to take an approach. They didn't want to talk about those issues. They wanted to fly under the radar, so to speak, and hope that the PED wouldn't come down on them. I am not built that way. I am built with the idea that when I served in the Navy and fought for our constitutional frame of government, that we as individuals have the right to decide these things for ourselves and not kowtow to a tyrannical, unelected, bureaucratic form of government. So when I could not understand the position of any of the school board members, and specifically District 1, David Conklin, nobody knows where he stands. What is it you believe, Mr. Conklin? Why don't you speak out at board meetings and talk about what it is you want to do as a board member? And the whole board just, nobody says anything. Interestingly enough, at the last school board meeting, Peyton Yates stood up and passionately told everyone in that room, we are at war with these mandates, with this idea that we're going to teach critical race theory to our children and destroy the quality education that we have here in Artesia. We need to go to war and fight. That's why I want to run for school board. That's why I'm running for school board. I am a fighter. I am a vocal fighter. There will not be anyone that does not understand where I am coming from or why. But we can't have people on the school board that are milquetoast. President Biden pled with the Taliban, please don't take our embassy. What a joke. We need to fight, and I am a fighter.
Excellent. I want to give you time to...
My minder has told me I've had enough.
Well, we've got about 2 minutes left, so
Okay.
you're in District 1, and that's where you'll be on the ballot, and David Conklin is the incumbent.
Yes.
That is in that seat right now.
He'll be
and
here next week.
He will be here next
No,
week.
The 14th.
The 14th.
The second Thursday.
Okay.
And next Thursday from 11 to 12 from 12 to 1, lunch hour at the headquarters. They can find out more about Dan.
Come talk to Dan and...
I got more flags in.
Okay.
Different kinds of flags. I got a Dolly Madison flag. I have a Don't Tread on Me flag. All sorts of flags in.
Dolly
I have-
Madison. If you
Yeah.
said that, I'm probably thinking wrong. Was that like a ding dong?
Betsy Ross. Oh my God. Betsy Ross flag.
Dolly Madison, our flag creator.
Okay, a
Betsy Ross
I'm
flag,
I'm
okay.
so listening to this over here. Oh my gosh.
Dolly
And then
Madison.
we're raffling another Henry rifle.
Okay,
So
excellent.
come-
How much
come
are the
get one of
raffle
those.
tickets?
$5, 6 for 20.
6 for 20.
Yes.
That's a deal
Yes.
there.
Oh my gosh.
Well, Dan, I'm glad you came in. Appreciate you coming by and chatting with us. And if folks want to talk to Dan more about
Yes.
the issues that
Yes.
he's passionate about, or maybe they have issues that they're
Right.
passionate about that
And
they
they
want to
wanna
share
know.
with Dan,
12 to 1.
12 to 1 on Thursday.
202 North 2nd is the address.
202 North 2nd. Okay. Well, that's
Okay.
great. And then next week, who are you bringing?
David.
Oh, David. I
No,
thought you said in 2 weeks.
Yeah. He'll be back.
Okay. Excellent. Well, good.
See, you got me
I
off.
want to say,
No, I'm just...
David Conklin has a very good reputation. He likes the kids.
He does. He loves the
takes
kids.
good care of the teams. He has them out to his place and gives them barbecues and that sort of thing. He's got a very good reputation. There's nothing that David has done that upsets me except the remaining quiet and not fighting against what we're fighting against.
And we'll get more information on the process that the Board of Public Education
ED.
Department's doing on this critical race thing. Because
Right.
And you're going to announce that later, right?
Absolutely, and I'm with you guys. That's just the most ridiculous, horriblest, terriblest thing that could ever be imposed on
Yes.
anybody, and that can't happen. That can't happen. However,
hoping.
it needs to not happen. It needs to not happen.
Right.
So, well, good. Well, thanks so much, Dan and Seliah. Thanks so much for coming in. Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for having
Thank
us.
you for having
And
me.
we'll see you next week.
I'll be here.
All right, that's going to wrap up the Good Morning Artesia radio show. Bulldog Football